Hey guys, sorry I'm a little late for today's video, but continuing on in the same chapter, uh, the next day he almost forgot about Gandalf. He didn't remember things very well unless he put him down on his engagement tablet like this. Gandalf, T, Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and then he remembered. He rushed and put on a kettle and put on another cup and saucer, an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say when he saw it wasn't Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf with a blue beard, tucked in a golden belt, and very bright eyes under a dark green hood. As soon as the door was open, he pushed inside, just as if he was expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg, and "Dwalin at your service," he said with a low bow. "Bill Baggins at yours," said the Hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence was followed by something uncomfortable, he added, "I'm just about to make tea. Pray come in and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. "And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came in and suddenly hung up his things in your hall without a word of explanation?" They had not been at the table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the Hobbit, and went off to the door. "So you finally got here at last," and was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time, but it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf on the doorstep with a white beard and a scarlet hood. And he too hopped inside as soon as the door opened, just as if he had been invited. "I see that they've already begun to arrive," he said when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung it next to the red one and said, "Balin at your service," he said with his hand on his breast. "Thank you," Bilbo said with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but they had begun to arrive had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know before they arrived. But he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought about the cakes might run short, and he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to how painful he might have to go without. Come along in, have some tea," he managed to say after taking a deep breath. "A little beer would suit me better, if it's all the same to you, my good sir," said Balin with his white beard. "But I don't mind. Some cake, seed cake if you have any." "Lots!" Bilbo found himself answering to his own surprise. And he found himself scuttling off to the cellar to fill a pint beer mug, and to the pantry to fetch two beautiful round seed cakes, which he had baked that afternoon for his afternoon supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in the front of them when a loud ring at the bell again, and then another ring. Gandalf was certain this time, he thought as he puffed along the passage, but it was not. It was two more dwarfs, both in blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards, and each of them carried a bag of tools and a spade. In they hopped as soon as the doorbell rang to open, and Bilbo was hardly surprised at all. "What can I do for you, my dwarves?" "Keely at your service," said one. "And Feely," said the other, and they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. "At yours and your families," replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time. "Dwalin Balin all right here, I see," said Keely. "Let us join the throng." "Throng?" thought Mr. Baggins. "I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a moment and collect my wits and have a drink." He had only just had a sip in the corner, while the four dwarves sat around the table and talked about mines and goals and troubles, goblins and predications of dragons and lots of other things which he did not understand. And he did not want to, for they sounded too dangerous, when ding dong a ling dang, and his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit boy was trying to pull the handle off. "Someone at the door," he said, blinking. "Some four, I should say, by the sound," said Feely. "Besides, we saw them come along behind us in the distance." The poor hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands and wondered what had happened and what was going to happen and whether they would all stay for supper. Then the bell rang again, louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 after all. It was 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He had hardly turned the knob before they were all inside, bowing, saying, "At your service," one after another. Dory, Nori, Ori, Oing, and Gloin were their names. And very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood, and a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs. And off they marched with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts to join the others. Already had become a throng. Some called for ale, some called for porter, and one for coffee, and all of them called for cakes. So the hobbit was kept very busy for a while. A big jug of coffee had just been set in the hearth, the seed cakes were gone, and the dwarves were starting a round of buttered scones when there came a loud knock. Not a ring, but a hard rat-tat on the hobbit's beautiful green door. Someone was banging with a stick! Bilbo rushed along the passages, very angry and almost altogether bewildered and bewuthered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the others. More dwarves! 4 more! And there was Gandalf behind, leaning on the staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he put there the morning before. Carefully, he said. It's not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat, and then open the door like a pop gun. Let me introduce Bifur, Bofur, Bumper, and especially Thorin. At your service, said Bifur, Bofur, and Bumper. A bumper? Bumper? I don't know why. Bifur, Bofur, Bumper, all standing in a row. They hung up 2 yellow hoods and a pale green one, and a sky blue one with a long silver tassel. This one belonged to Thorin, enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Thorin Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat with Bifur, Bofur, and Bumper on top of him. For one thing, Bumper was very immensely fat and heavy. Thorin, indeed, was very haughty and said nothing about service. But poor Bilbo Baggins said he was sorry so many times that at last he grunted, Pray don't mention it," and stopped frowning. "Now we're all here," said Gandalf, looking at the row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own hat hanging on the pegs. "What a merry gathering! I hope there is something left for latecomers to eat and drink. What's that? Tea? No, thank you. A little red wine. I think for me." "And for me," said Thorin. "And raspberry jam and apple tart," said Bifur. "And mince pies and cheese," said Bofur. And pork pie and salad," said Bumper. "And more cakes and ale and coffee, if you don't mind," called the other dwarves through the door. "Put on a few eggs, there's a good fellow," Gandalf called after him as the hobbit slumped off to the pantries. "And just bring out one of the cold chickens and the pickles. It seems to know as much about the inside of my loaders as I do," thought Mr. Baggins, who was feeling positively flummoxed and was beginning to wonder whether or not a wretched adventure had not come straight to his house. By the time he got all the bottles and dishes and knives and forks and glasses and plates and spoons and things piled up on big trays, he was getting very hot and red in the face and annoyed. "Confiscate and be bothered these dwarves," he said aloud. "Why don't they come and live to hen?" And lo and behold, there stood Balin and Dwalin at the door of the kitchen, and Feely and Keely behind them. And before he could say knife, they had whisked away the trays and a couple of tables in the parlor and set everything afresh. Gandalf sat at the head of the party with the 13 dwarves all around him, and Bilbo sat on a stool in the fireplace, nibbling a biscuit. His appetite was quite taken away, and trying to look as if this was all perfectly ordinary and not the least bit an adventure. The dwarves ate, and talked, and time got on. At last they pushed their chairs back, and Bilbo made a move to collect the plates and glasses. I suppose you all stayed to supper?" he said in Plies' unimpressing tone. Of course, said Thorin, and after, we shan't get through the business till late, and we must have some music first. Now to clear up. Thereupon the 12 dwarves, not Thorin, he was too important, and stayed talking to Gandalf, jumped to their feet and made tall piles of all things. Off they went, and not waiting for trays, balancing columns of plates, each with a bottle on top, and with one hand, while the Hobbit ran after them, almost squeaking with fright. Please be careful, and please don't trouble. I can manage. But the dwarves only started to sing.
Light. Here you go, Warren. Give it to me.
Excuse me, that's my mother's trespassing butter. It's over 100 years old. And can you not do that? You'll blunt them.
Ooh, do you hear that, lads? He says we'll blunt the knives.
Blunt the knives, bend the forks,
Smash the bottles and burn the corks.
the glasses and crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates. Tuck the cloth, twiddle the hat, leave the hooks on the bedroom mat, pour them into the pantry floor. Splash the wine on every door, dump across the boiling bowl, down the mop of the thumping wall. When you're finished, if they are send them down the hall to roll. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
And of course they did none of these dreadful things, and everything was clean and put away safe as quick as lightning. While the Hobbit was turning round and round in the middle of the kitchen trying to see what they were doing, they went back and found Thorin with his feet on the fender, smoking a pipe. He was blowing the most enormous smoke rings, and wherever he told one to go, it went. Up the chimney, or around the clock, on the mantelpiece, or under the table, or round and round the ceiling, but wherever it went, it was not quick enough to escape Gandalf. Pop! He sent a smaller smoke ring from his short clay pipe through each one of Thorin's. Then Gandalf's smoke ring would go green and come back to hover around the wizard's head. He had a quiet cloud of them about him already, and the dim light it made him look strange and sorcerous. Bilbo stood and watched. He loved smoke rings, and he blushed to think how proud he had been yesterday morning of the smoke rings he had sent up the wind around the hill. Now for some music. Bring out the instruments. Keely rushed for the bags and brought back little fiddles. Nori and Ori brought back out flutes from somewhere inside their coats. Bumper produced a drum from the hall. Bifur and Bofer went out too and came back with clarinets that they left among the walking sticks. Dwal and Balling said, "Excuse me, I left mine on the porch. Just bring mine in with you," said Thorin. They came back with violas as big as themselves, and Thorin's harp wrapped in a green cloth. It was a beautiful golden harp. And when Thorin struck it, the music began all at once, so suddenly and sweet that Bilbo forgot everything else, and he was swept up into the dark lands under strange moons, far over the water, and very far from his hobbit hole under the hill. Dark came into the room, and the little window that opened the side of the hill, the firelight flickered. It was April, and still he played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard waggled against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost, and still they played on. At first, I'm sorry, and suddenly, first one and then another began to sing as they played. Deep there was singing of the dwarves in deep places of their ancient homes, and this is a fragment of their song, if it can be like their song without their music.
Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away heroes of yore made mighty spells while hammers fell like ringing bells in places deep where dark things sleep. Elvish Lord, there many a gleaming golden hoard they shaped and brought, and light they caught to hide in gems on hills of sword, on silver necklaces they strung, the floating stars on crowns they hung, the dragonfly in twisted wire, they mesh the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to claim our long forgotten gold. Goblets they carved there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man delves. There lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flamely spread, the trees like torches blazed with light, the bells were ringing in the day, and men looked up with faces pale. The dragon's eye, more fierce than fire, dungeons deep and caverns deep, we must away ere break of day to win our hearts and gold from him.
As they sang that, this hobbit fell in love with, felt the love of music, felt the love of beautiful things made by hands and cunning, and by magic moving through them, a fierce and jealous love, the desire of the hearts of dwarves. Then something tookish woke up inside of him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore the caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out the window. The stars were out in a dark sky above the trees. He thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, in the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up, probably someone lighting a wood fire, and he thought of thundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling all their flames. He shuddered, and very quickly he was playing Mr. Baggins of Underhill again. And I'm going to stop right there for right now. I'm going to pick up right where I left off, but I will see you guys tomorrow.